Hello and welcome to Love Talk. You're here with James
and Helena.
And today we'll be talking about the art of solving problems, because although problems are normal, if you don't know how to identify them and solve them, it can be something that gets out of hand.
Problems are unavoidable, but today we're going to talk about some things that you can do in order to don't make it, a problem in your life, if that makes any sense. Problems to become a problem in your life, in your relationship.
And by the way, we have a couple here with us that we'll meet in just a second, who before they found out what the art of solving problems was, they got to the point of having physical fights. So without further ado, let's meet our guests.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
We have
Hello.
Michael and Chris. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening.
It's a pleasure to have you here with us. In the second part of the show, we'll be hearing from them. We'll be hearing their story and how their relationship is right now. But let's go and watch this video we recorded just a few days ago. Welcome back. Well, we'd like to thank the guys at the Islington Boxing Club for allowing us to record these images. And what you saw there is exactly what happens in many relationships. People end up in an emotional boxing ring. Isn't that right, Helena?
Yes, and what happens? They fight so much, they never get anywhere. If it gets even worse, and they are just going on and on in circles, and they never solve the problem.
And can I just say, look, an argument is normal. There is nobody that has been in a relationship that hasn't had an argument. But there's the argument that you have a discussion, a little argument, but then you close that chapter and you move on. Unfortunately, there are people who go on for 12 rounds, right?
Yes. And there's actually even physical violence involved, not just words.
When myself and Helena, we got married, in the beginning, if we had a problem, and this was mainly my side, if we had a disagreement, I would sulk, and I would sulk for a few days, right? I would give Helena the silent treatment. That was my way of solving problems. It didn't work.
Guess what my way was? It was just to try to make you say something or react. And I remember once I was trying to make you talk, and all I can see is the alarm clock flying from one side to the other side of the room. So yeah, it didn't work. So
this is before we found out the art of solving problems. Of course, if we've been together now
it happens to everyone, isn't it?
If we've been together now for 11 years, it's because we've learned a thing or two about solving problems. And let me give you a tip. I want to give you the first tip of the program today on how to solve problems in your relationship. Don't deal with the problem as if it were a problem in a relationship. Let me tell you what I mean. When you work for a company and there's a problem with a colleague, you don't go there and start shouting. You try to solve that problem without emotions attached to it. In fact, it's emotions, when the person is very emotional, that makes things get worse. So the less emotional you are when there is an argument, the better.
Well, my tip is, there's many, but the one that really worked for me is when you disagree, of course you get angry, you see that the other person gets angry. The best thing is to give it some time, go somewhere or cool down first and then talk about it. Because what happens if they are angry and they start talking about the problem, they, like you said, they are using emotion, which is anger. They're not really thinking of the words that they are saying, and they are just hurting one another.
Yeah.
And words can never be taken back.
And think about this: when you are at work, if you work in the same company for 1 year, how many arguments have you had there? In fact, when someone gets you angry, gets you upset, you take a deep breath and you go outside to get some fresh air. That's as far as it goes. If your boss gets you angry, you don't argue with him. You don't raise your voice, you don't shout at him. So how come you do that to the one person that you say you love? Think about it. How many times maybe you've said you don't like your boss, you even hate your boss, and yet you've never had an argument with him as you've had with your partner. Does that make sense? How can you argue with the person that you love more than you argue with someone you don't like? So when there's a problem, remove the feelings out of the equation and try to solve it in an environment where you can both talk.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I would like to say another way is, if you are arguing, chances are that you are arguing over the same things, over and over the same thing. And sometimes you need to stop and analyze. Don't be proud and don't just blame the other person, but hold on, is it really true what she say? Maybe I need to, perhaps they are arguing about, oh, you spend too much money, or you don't pay attention to me, or whatever. Maybe you should take some thought and see if maybe there's a little percentage of truth, and back off a little bit and give it some time and apologize later.
In fact, someone was saying to us recently that the lady said, look, he doesn't understand me. The problem is that I explain myself to him and he doesn't understand me. The question is, have you understood him?
Because maybe he says the same thing about you, isn't it? Maybe you are fighting so hard for him to understand you when you haven't really made an effort to understand him, right? And that was one of the problems we had in the beginning, because Helena, she really wanted me to speak about my day, about my feelings. And I'm sure Michael, our guest, he will back me up on this. When you arrive home late in the evening, tired, the last thing you want to do is talk. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. We want to get home and we want to sit down and we want to chill out in front of the TV.
Yeah.
Eat or just be by ourselves for a while.
Yeah.
If we talk, we're going to talk in our own time. But if not, our wives, our girlfriends, they want us to speak there and then. Yeah.
And the thing is, we don't want to talk. We don't want to sit on our own. We want them to sit there and just be there
quietly.
Yeah. But when girls get together, they like to talk and they expect us men to do the same thing with them. And we're not made up that way.
And by the way, let me tell you, we're not saying that we're right. We are wrong. But then again, men and women are different. We're just saying that the woman has to try to understand the man and the man understand the woman.
Actually, I wouldn't even say that you are wrong. This is how men are, this is how women are. In a general way, we can't generalize, but it's not a problem. It's just that there must be a balance, that's all it is.
It's like they have to meet halfway.
That's it.
Right? So we don't like to talk at all, and the woman likes to talk a lot. So the woman understands that perhaps the man will try to talk a little bit and talk more eventually as your relationship gets more mature, but he will never be the chatterbox that perhaps your best friend is.
I know how you get him to talk, huh, Chris? So, which channel would you like to watch? Or which food or snack would you like? Then they will talk, isn't it? So there are ways you can get your man to be a bit more, talkative and share what's inside of his head and his thoughts and his feelings.
Yeah. So Michael, tell us a little bit about the fights. How did they start? What caused the fights when you were initially together?
Well, like any relationship, it started off as just small arguments, small tiffs here and there. But gradually as things went on, it started getting worse. So there was swearing, then there was shouting, then it got like a holding, and then it got to the physical part.
What did you guys used to fight about? What was the reason that you used to fight about?
To be honest, the arguments were based on silly things. Sometimes we couldn't remember what we were arguing about. But I don't think it was actually anything in the relationship itself that was going wrong. It was because I was going through depression at the time, so I was very irritable, used to lose my temper very easily, I was very needy. So all of these things, like any little thing that would happen would be enough to kind of go overboard and argue and fight about. Because sometimes we'd be arguing for ages, for hours, and we'd forgotten what the original argument was about.
But did you know that she suffered from that when you started dating? Did you know it was an issue?
Not when we started dating, but...
Sorry, I didn't tell you. Probably would have dated in the other way.
I saw her. She used to have these panic attacks at night, and I didn't understand what panic attacks were about, and then I would say,
Probably
"Look,
thought I was mad."
Yeah, snap out of it." And
which used to get me really angry, because the worst thing you can say to someone that's feeling that way is to snap out of it, because you can't.
I used to say, "Look, it's in your mind. Come on, you can deal with this." And of course, it got her wound up, so she would probably take it out on me, and because I wasn't giving her the attention as I should have, things got worse.
So did you, when he would tell you to snap out of it, and that's what made you really angry? Is it because he didn't understand what you were going through?
It was, yeah, because I already felt so lonely, and the fact that he was just telling me to snap out of it made me think that, oh, you're belittling what I'm going through. You don't understand what I'm going through, or the extent that how I feel. And I just thought he didn't care. But it's not that he didn't care, because to be honest, he put up with a hell of a lot from me. But it's just because he didn't know how to handle it. And I didn't understand that from him at the time.
But you loved each other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
So, and this is what we were saying, Helena, that some people, they love each other, but they can't stay together for some reason, because they don't know the art of solving their problems. They really want to be together, but they don't know how to.
And many separate, end their marriage because of something that could be easily sorted, you know.
I think with us, because we loved one another, when we used to make up, it was like the good part of the relationship. But then we would kind of repeat everything that we kind of apologize for after 5-10 minutes, and then we'll be starting at the second round of arguments again, like in the boxing. Yeah.
So tell us something. You got to a point where the arguments got physical.
Yeah.
Right? When do you remember the first time that the fight got physical?
It was actually me that started things off with the physical part, because he told me later that he'd never in his mind imagine that he would ever hit a woman. But I was the one that started to lash out because of frustration. I used to lose my temper with him, so I would just sort of maybe push him, started throwing things at him, and then one day I just really slapped him hard around the face.
So you were like pushing those buttons, right?
I was.
She picked up an alarm clock or something.
It was a remote control.
A remote control, and we've got concussion because I can't remember. But she threw it at me one day in anger, and I can't remember.
Yeah, I caught you under the eye.
Yeah.
You see, when the person is involved, so deeply involved in arguing, it has become something natural. It's like you don't think of what you're doing, or
I always
the
felt
consequences.
terrible afterwards. I always felt awful. But at the time, I just couldn't control it.
We're going to go into a short break, but when we come back, Michael's going to tell us about the first time that he became physically violent towards Chris, because initially Chris was pushing the buttons, she slapped him across the face, like she said. When we come back, you'll hear how he became violent towards her, but eventually how they managed to find out the art to solve problems. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're going to go back to talk to our guests about the first time that Michael was physically violent with Chris. But before that, if you would like to participate in our shows, there's many ways that you can do it.
Yes, indeed. You have our website, first of all, which is lovetalkshow.tv. We have our YouTube channel, which is Love Talk Show channel. We also have our email address. We've been receiving a few emails of people sharing their experiences, and you are welcome to do the same thing. The email address is lovelab@lovetalkshow.tv, and also Twitter, which is @lovetalkshow.
So guys, tell us about the first time that Michael snapped out of it? Because Michael is a pretty calm guy, right? So for,
Yeah, I thought he was.
How did that happen?
For him to slap you, Chris, you had to push his buttons big time. What happened?
I mean, this abuse that I would say on my part was happening for quite a long time, and he wouldn't really react, and that used to get me even more angry because.
But when did it start, Chris? From the first time you met?
No. I think it was when we moved in together. I think when did we move in together? 2 or 3 years after we were going out. Yeah, it's about 2 or 3 years into the relationship.
Okay. Then you
when we're
moved in
sort of
together?
living together now, in each other's shoes all the time, and shoes, you know what I mean. So we're always together and stuff. So that's when I started to kind of demonstrate that kind of behaviour.
Okay.
So then it was going on for a while, just me slapping, me pushing and throwing things and everything. And then one day I remember we stayed around his grandmother's house. It was supposed to be a happy time. It was Christmas. We were planning our trip to Paris as well in the New Year. And we had an argument over something, I can't remember what. And I slapped him really hard. And he just looked at me, and the look on his face I'd never seen before. And all of a sudden, I just put this big hand across my face, but really hard, and I went flying. Ooh. And I was like, everything went white for a second. I thought, oh, he just hit me back. How dare he hit me back? Kind of thing.
So you are allowed to hit him?
Exactly, that's what I was going
as much as you want.
Things played differently in my mind because I just remember saying something to hurt her. She got angry, she slapped me, and I immediately slapped her back. So
it's like a reaction, isn't it?
Yeah. So it was blurry. It was like both of us were angry at that moment, but we've
one
got
was
our own
thinking.
versions of things. But that was basically what happened.
And the argument was probably over something small again.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't even remember.
I think I said something which aggravated her, and because she hit me, my normal reaction was to slap her back. Don't you ever do that?
I think
to
you'd
me
had enough by then. I mean, it's not an excuse for anyone to hit their partner, but
of course not.
I think I just pushed him so much.
But days later, we were in Paris,
Yeah.
having romantic meals in the Eiffel Tower, etc. So
Straight after when she hit you and you hit her back, what did you do?
He cried.
Okay.
yeah.
So
Sorry to say, because he was so upset. I know it sounds really-
okay. So
he was so upset that he'd done, because he'd always said, he'd seen things as a child and everything. He'd always said that he would never ever hit a woman.
So it's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
It's what we were saying in the beginning. You are in a fight. You are so much into the argument. You are not even thinking. And when you realize what you've
You
done,
do things out of character. You do things that you would never expect you were capable of. And that's
Tell
scary.
us something. When was it that you started to learn or to decide to learn that instead of fighting against each other, you would learn the art of solving problems? What was the changing point?
Well, I actually was getting help for the depression at the time, and I was kind of focusing on that more than the relationship. But then we also had an opportunity to go for couples counselling, and that was really, really good for us because it's like we learned, and we attended some seminars as well, specifically to do with love life.
Okay.
And we learned how to respect one another. And I think the best thing that I learned for myself, because I would never ever give him an opportunity to explain things or to communicate or to talk. I was the one that always wanted to get my point across. He had to understand my point of view. I wasn't listening to him. So that's I know it sounds obvious you need to listen to one another, but I think sometimes for some people that it's like on the surface, don't really understand what listening really is. It's about sort of letting your pride go and just really wanting to hear what the other person says.
And the interesting thing is, like we were saying before, because before you wanted him to understand you, but now you were trying to understand him.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was vice versa because I never used to listen to her. When we would argue a lot and quarrel, it was like we wanted the last word. So our voices would be raised and I wanted the last say. And if she said something, then I would kind of counteract that and say, look, I'm going to have the final word. But then she would shout loud as well. So I learned now.
Both wanted to.
We wanted to prove
To
our
be
point.
loud.
Yeah.
We wanted to be right.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
So one thing that I learned was that I needed to listen as well because maybe she said it outwardly, but I was thinking, no, I'm right all the time, but I wouldn't say that. So now I learned I had to listen. I had to really listen to her and accept that I had problems as well, though I thought I was always right.
But look how important that is, because a lot of people say this, and a lot of people say, oh, he doesn't understand me, she doesn't understand me, but maybe you haven't even tried to understand the other person. That is the key. one of the first keys to learning the art of solving problems is for you to understand the other person, not forcing your point across. Now, once you started doing that, in about 2 days' time, you managed to solve all the problems, right?
We wish it was in 2 days' time.
It took a while because it's like we were getting the counselling and the help, but then I would slip up. But then I remember the very, very first time I actually listened to him, because I went to argue back, because I slipped up, okay, let me try again. It was like that, next argument, I'm going to try again, like to control myself. But then one day we were arguing, and then he said something, and instead of reacting, I just kept quiet. And then he was shocked, because I think it was the first time I actually kept my mouth shut to actually listen to him. So he was like really like, and he was like kind of even stuttering because you weren't expecting it.
What am I going to do now? What am I saying now?
But then he started talking, and I thought, oh my gosh, all the
makes
time
sense.
he makes sense. All the time that I was thinking that I knew what was in his head. So I wouldn't even let him finish a sentence before, but I actually listened to him for the first time, and I thought he's making sense. And actually, it's like we're arguing the same point all these years. It was just, I felt so bad that day, because I thought, oh, the poor thing.
You know, there will be slip-ups. I slipped up as well. So sometimes, you know, I would argue back and she would keep quiet. So...
Because both are trying to change.
Yeah, exactly. So there was that stage, but we learned, and then we realized we kind of made up quicker than normal, you know. So
it was gradual, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was gradual, but we kept at it because we loved one another and we wanted it to work.
So do you believe, Michael and Chris, that there are people who love each other, but because they don't know how to solve their problems, they can't stay together? Because you were one of those people. Perhaps if you hadn't learned those keys, what would have been of your relationship? What do you think?
I don't think we would have stayed together. But it's quite saddening, because there are lots of couples that they like you said, they do love each other, but they just can't. You can't go on like that. We were like that for how many years? 4 or 5 years?
About that.
We couldn't have gone on like that. And some couples can't take it. They don't get the help that they need that's available, and then they end up breaking up.
You know, it's not, for example, maybe you say, well, it's because we didn't love each other anymore, so we had all these problems. It's not true. Problems happen. But when you learn how to solve them, then you have the recipe for a great relationship.
I agree. And from listening to what you guys said, you see, it's about not losing respect from one another, not being selfish and being humble. You know, it's my turn to speak, let him speak now. And so many other things. I don't know, you know, those of you who are watching us now, you can pick up so many things from what they just said. Like, for example, the lack of respect, I think, is one of the main points. When you lose respect, that's it. Everything is allowed. Who cares? I'm just going to swear at him or at her. I'm going to beat her up.
And a last question, guys. Do you still have problems today?
Yes, obviously not to that extent. We have, like, when I say problems, we have like disagreements. We'll have an odd argument here and there, but it's not like we can actually sit down and discuss it and talk about it now. Whereas before, there wasn't.
We wouldn't talk for days, for example.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I want to, I don't know, Helena, if you want to say something, because I wanted to say something that I've had in my mind about this program for now at the end. And I want you to keep this with you. And think about the video you watched at the beginning with the boxing. Wouldn't that have been better if the couple were fighting but not against each other? Imagine there would be a third person in the ring, and that third person is the problem. Imagine both of them, man and woman, boxing the problem. Because at the end of the day, you are part of the same team. I had to understand that Helena and we are a team. There's no third person there, it's me and her. So when we fight for each other rather than against each other, that is the main key to solving problems. And like we said earlier, put emotions aside. If you're able to do this, if you form a team, and the great thing about a team is that the longer you play together, the better the team gets. So the longer you spend together as a couple solving problems and getting better at solving those problems, the better your relationship will become.
And also, James, just to add to what you just said, for example, Chris, she suffered from depression, right? So that used to trigger a lot of arguments, and he doesn't understand me. He thinks he's taking, you know, is what belittling me. How do you say? What's the word? Yeah. So, if you suffer from a problem that is there, I don't know, it could be a financial problem, it could be a health problem like you. I think it's wise, it's intelligent to solve that problem, seek help, like you did, and then go from there, because maybe that is where it all starts. It's the root of the so, you know, of them arguing so much.
Yeah.
And go from there.
And
I mean,
if there is a problem, then you solve the problem. Don't fight the person.
Yeah.
Remember, you are part of a team of two. So partner up against your problem, not against each other. Okay? Work on getting the art of solving problems right. It may take a while, but once you do get it right, then, my friend, nobody can stop your relationship. All right? Have a wonderful night. We'll see you next time.